welcome to everybody to our webinar. I'm Roberto Turin, Head of Technology at Cloud Academy. I'm leading a team of data scientists that is about researching new technology and creating innovation within our company. And one of our projects is about skill assessment. Today with me there is Stefano Giacone. I'll let him introduce himself.
Hi everyone, here's Stefano Giacone. I'm working Cloud Academy as a product manager, mainly on skill assessment technologies.
Yeah, thank you, Stefano. Yeah, in fact, Stefano and I work together as a synergy. We, with my team, work on creating the technology behind skill assessment, and Stefano is pushing it to our customer and making it available to end users. So today's webinar is about up-leveling your tech training with skill assessment. And the webinar is about explaining what's our skill assessment technology, how it works, and how you can get advantages from our product. At the end, what results companies can expect by using skill assessment. As a reminder, the webinar will be recorded, so you can see it later if you wish. And if you have any questions, feel free to write them within the chat box, and we will be happy to answer to them at the end of the webinar, or if there is not space to answer you later. So I would like to start with some part that is about our product. So I will let Stefano introduce the product with a simple demo.
Okay, thank you, Roberto. So, one of the questions we'd like to answer here at Cloud Academy is, how can I track my progress? So as you know, Cloud Academy is a learning platform about cloud computing. So we have a lot of courses and lecture about cloud technology. So you can follow a lot of courses, but you need to know if you are improving your skills. And maybe if you are training yourself for an exam, you need to know if you're ready for an exam. So what we build in Cloud Academy is not just content, meaning not just courses and lecture, but we also created a lot of way to assess your skills. And in order to track your skills, we created this score that I'm going to show you right now. So when you're in our platform, you can go to your profile in this way that I'm showing you on my screen, and you can see this page where you can track your score. So here on the top right, you can see your score is, in this moment, my score is 391 over 1,000. So the maximum score is 1,000. If you reach 1,000, means you know everything you need to know about cloud technology and programming. So this overall score means takes in consideration all the various skills that we have on Cloud Academy. But maybe you're not interested on everything. For example, here I can see that the Google Cloud Platform is the one I'm best at. So maybe I want to check the various skills of Google Cloud, how my skills in Google Cloud. So here, for example, I can click on it, and I can see all the domain of the Google Cloud Platform. For example, I'm an advanced student for Compute for Google. I'm intermediate for database, but I never did any assessment on analytics. So this tool is also very good to know what are my strengths and what are my weaknesses. So what should I improve given my score?
And Stefano, I see that you mentioned intermediate, beginner, advanced. Can you explain the difference between these different levels?
Yeah, sure. This is a very common question. So basically, we divided the 1,000 score into 3 parts. So if you are until 300 of score, you're a beginner. This means that you should be able to answer basic theoretical question about that topic. While until 660 points, you are intermediate. This means that you can answer more advanced theoretical question, and also you are able to solve real world task. So, for example, create an S3 bucket, for example, or configure an ELB, elastic load balancer, or something like that. While if you're an advanced student, meaning over 660 points, this means that you are able to solve a challenging situation of real world problem, and you also are very good on the theory. And but how can I improve my score? So what are the way we assess people? And we assess students basically in 3 ways. Now I'm switching to the search page. So here I searched for Kubernetes on our platform. And so you can find learning path, courses, where you learn about Kubernetes. But you can also do hands-on lab. These lab are real world exercise on Google, Microsoft Azure, or Amazon Web Services platform. So here you can do real world exercise, and at the end of the lab, you receive a score if you did all the thing that the exercise require you to do. And at the same, and this is for the real world exercise. We have also quizzes. So here, for example, I have a quiz on Kubernetes that you can do the quiz, and if you get the question right, you will gain some score. And also we have exams that are basically a bit more complicated than the quizzes. They usually have more and more advanced question. And also here, remember that if you do an exam, but you fail all the question, you also can lose your score. So remember that when you start a quiz or exam, if you feel that you're not prepared on that particular topic, you can discard the exam or the quiz in order to avoid the answer to impact your score. Because if you start an exam and then you realize that you did not prepare yourself for that particular topic, you can safely discard the exam and do it later. Otherwise, if you feel comfortable, you can submit the exam, and just keep in mind that if all the questions you didn't answer, they are considered wrong. So also here, if you didn't answer many questions, maybe consider discarding the exam instead of submitting it. And but we often receive many questions about why a quiz or exam gave me few or many points. So I will hand to Roberto to explain us how this assessment works.
Yeah, thank you, Stefano, for your interesting demo. This, of course, was part of the end user experience. And what I'm going to tell you now is what there's behind this UI that you saw. I hope is not going to be too boring with respect to what Stefano just shown. In particular, as you saw, a list of skills on the left side of the user profile page, they are modeled in within what we call a knowledge graph. So it's a network of skills that are interconnected each other. That means that we have a list of now I can count about 500, 600 skills that are all connected to the others. And the way they are connected is to represent their semantic relationships. So here there is a simple abstract. We have AWS in the middle, just because it's one of the most popular nodes skill that we have in our graph. And connected to AWS, there are several domains. You see networking for AWS, security for AWS, computer for AWS, and storage for AWS. This name should sound familiar to you if you have already used our user profile page, because they are the names you also find when you browse across your skills. Connected to these skills that we call domain skills, you see the services of AWS. So we have, for example, AWS IAM that is connected to security. There is Amazon EC2 that is connected to compute for AWS. But more interesting, there are also skills that are connected to multiple domains. So for example, Amazon VPC is connected to security for AWS and to networking for AWS. That's a great difference between a tree, that is the classical way to represent the skill, and a graph where skills have much more connection among themselves. One classical question that I get is, can I personalize this knowledge graph? And the answer is yes. For enterprise customers, if you have a skill that is not present in our knowledge graph, there is a way passing through our customer service to personalize this knowledge graph. So imagine that you have a skill like your custom security policy, that is, of course, belongs to the domain security. And it's something that is not general purpose, is specific for your enterprise. And in there, you can have resources that explain to your user, to your members, what's your custom security policy. You can have questions, you can have any content to assess the user knowledge on these custom policies. Then there is a way to add this skill, and using the content engine, that is our tool for enterprises, to add content that allows to train and test this skill. Besides that, so given that there is this graph of knowledge, what we do is using the connections in order to propagate the knowledge, the information that we get from your assessments. So as Stefan was mentioning, when you do a quiz, you answer to a question, we try to measure your skill to provide you a score. The graph allows to connect that question to other skills that are in the same graph. So imagine that you answer to a question about S3. The fact that S3 is a skill, a service of AWS, that is a storage service of AWS, and allows us to say that you know something also about storage for AWS. And similarly, we can make some inference on your knowledge about AWS and about storage. Of course, the higher we go in this hierarchy, the lower confidence we have in the score that we are assessing. So whether we can be very confident in saying that, oh, you are either expert or a beginner user, if you answer correctly to many questions on S3, given only these questions, we can say something about storage, but with less confidence. And again, going even further in the hierarchy, so to the AWS or storage level, we can say something that has a lower confidence, because you just answer to S3 questions. So you haven't covered all the other services of AWS or all the other skills of storage. Interesting, the overall you see in the user's profile page is computed using the same graph. So it's part of this propagation of knowledge. Our goal is anytime you, as a user, do an assessment, so you answer to a question or you do a lab that has an assessment inside, we compute and update your scores for any skill, as many skills as we can. So in this case, imagine that you just answered to a single question about S3. We basically updated the estimate on your score or on 5 skills. And the more questions you answer, the more dense we try to fill this graph in a dense way. A similar example is that you answer to S3, and again, using the knowledge of what we have in this graph, we can say that again, we can estimate your score on storage for AWS, but we can try to make an estimate also on Glacier, that is a service of AWS that has storage for AWS as the same parent of S3. Again, with respect to S3, we will have a lower confidence in the score that we will provide. But still, it's a way to start giving you a forced assessment on skills where we don't know, you haven't done any assessment so far. Given that, imagine that now you are answering to a question, and our goal is to provide to you a score in the range 0-1000. To simplify the examples, let me talk about a beginner or expert user. And imagine that in this range, you are given a question that is close to beginner. So it's an easy question, and you answer correctly. Using this question, we update the corresponding skill. So imagine that it's asked questions about simple storage service. We update your score on simple storage service and on all the skills that are connected within the graph. What we do is to collect, imagine that you have done a quiz with multiple questions. We collect your answer that can be correct or wrong, and on the basis on them, we try to infer what's your level. Given these examples, we can try to set a bar here that says that your level is where there is the blue line. So because you were able to answer correctly to the question that had a difficulty lower than this blue line, and you wrongly answered the two questions that have had a difficulty higher than this blue line. So what we try to do is using some probabilistic model. Let me just mention ILO or item response theory, but without entering into the details of these models that have boring math functions. The idea is this one: when you answer to a question, we try to set the your right score by splitting the questions into between the one that you answer correctly and the ones that you didn't answer correctly. Of course, this is not as simple as I did in this example, because in most of the cases, the situation is this one: you answer correctly to questions that were easy, and the same you did for questions that were very advanced. In this case, we cannot probably set a precise threshold for you, so we cannot say your exact score given these questions. So we can kind of having a confidence of a confidence window of your score. And in this case, manually we cannot find the right number of your score. IRT, and so item response theory and ILO are used in order to get this score in a more exact way. Let me conclude this part about the difficulty of item, making you a simple example. Imagine that you answer correctly to one question. The tendency can be to set this your level where you see the blue line. But at the end, if we keep asking you questions about this level, so lower than your current skill, we are not verifying that you have a skill that is higher than this one. So at the end of the day, imagine that I keep asking you very simple questions. Even if I ask you 1,000 questions, I can never tell that you are an expert user, because I never tested you on higher level skills. To set that you are an expert, I need to test you also on skills that have higher level. And only at this point I can set that your score is much higher than beginner. My last slide is about another property of questions. We have been talking about difficulty, which is the one that everybody thinks about. When you answer to a question, there is another property that we take into account, that is the item discrimination. The discrimination specifically of a question is the capability to provide us a useful information. And I'll make you a simple example. Imagine that the question, whether it is difficult or not, has a kind of embedding in the questions test also the answer. So I'm asking you, is the storage S3, or better, what the storage S3 is about, and one of the answer is storage. So it's kind of, I'm suggesting you the correct answer. So regardless of the difficulty of the question, this and your knowledge, you'll be able to answer to these questions, of course, and it doesn't matter the skill you have. You can be a beginner or an advanced user, and you'll be able to answer to this question because I erroneously put the answer within the text or the text of the question itself. When the question is not discriminating, our confidence in assessing your skill is very low. And that's the example on the left side. That means that even if you answer correctly to this silly question, we cannot say that you are either a beginner or an expert user because it has a very low discrimination. Rather, if a question has a high discrimination, it means that it's is formulated in a way that whether you answer correctly, we know that your skill is above the question level. Whether you answer wrongly, we know that your skill is below this question level. And so we keep on providing to our content team feedback about attending discriminations in order for them to provide questions that are as much discriminating as possible, because they allow to compute your knowledge level with the less number of questions. We need, for example, dozens of questions that have a low discrimination to assess your score with respect to, let's say, 8, 10 questions if they are very discriminating. And that's what all about what's behind the technology of skill assessment. Yes, Stefano.
Yeah, one question. And what about the lab challenges and why they get me more score than other labs?
Yeah, sure. I made a lot of examples about questions. At the end of the day, if you see in my slides, I call them items in the sense that everything that where you are tested on from the theories we are using are referred to as items. And a lab can be considered as a question. So a lab has a discrimination and a difficulty, as well as any questions have in our system. And so in our system, we also have two kinds of labs. We have the guided labs and the challenge lab. The guided labs have a discrimination that is very low and a difficulty that is low. That means that if you do a guided lab, we expect you to do it because it's very, it's like a tutorial. So if you do it step by step, you will succeed. Sorry. And so at the end, your score will increase just for a bit, not a lot, if you do a guided lab because it has a very low difficulty. On the other hand, if we take a challenge lab, it's very close to what you can imagine as an exam. And the challenge lab are much more difficult. That means that if you are able to do correctly a challenge lab, we can say that you have a very high score. Rather, if you are not able to do a challenge lab, we cannot say that you are a beginner. We just can say that you are not at that level in order to pass the exam. And so when you do a challenge lab, your score delta is increased much more than when you do a guided lab.
Okay, thank you. Very clear. Thank
you.
So yeah, can I continue?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, so now I'd like to show you an enterprise feature for our enterprise customers. So so far we talk about the skills of the single user, so where you can track your score and your skills growing up while studying. But if you are part of a company, the manager of the company can have visibility into the skills of their company. And this is, so I'm showing you the management dashboard at the skill profiles tab. So here here we are seeing the overall skills of this company. So basically here we can see their score on the various platforms, but remember that here on the top you can also do the comparison on domain or teams or whatever you want. And here on the left, you can see the competency level. So let's suppose that I want to know how many experts about Amazon I have in my company. I can just go here with my mouse. I can see 4% of people in my company are advanced user of Amazon Web Services. And below, you can find the most important graph your company should look at. It's the skill growth rate. So this graph is very important because it shows them how the skills are growing into your company from the beginning. So here, as you can see, at the end of this 1 year period, my company, thanks to Cloud Academy, improved, for example, overall more than 700%, and only on Amazon Web Services more than 1,000%. So meaning that if you compare the skills of the people of the company at the 1 year ago to compared to today, the skills grow so much, 1,000%. So it seems that Cloud Academy is very helpful to improve the skills of people. And but here we are looking just at the overall score. You can also dig deeper and see all the various skills. For example, let's suppose that I want to check among my Amazon user the status of security. So I want to know who are the experts about security in my company and how is security going. So I want to be sure that, for example, if I'm focusing on security, I want to be sure that the skill growth rate of security is improving, and it actually is. So at the end of this year, the security for AWS improved a bit below 1,000%. And below here, I can also check what are my best members on security, because here there are the top user regarding the topic I just selected. So here, Donna Graham is the best user on security, and I can check everyone here. So let's suppose that I want to find a good team to assign some security task. Here I can select teams, and here I have this team inside my company, AWS Solution Architect. They are the best one for security topics. And so this is my overview on the management dashboard. Just to remind, it's an enterprise feature. And yeah, that's it.
Okay. Okay, thanks, Stefano. Yeah, I think that you really gave the picture of what we do from the skill assessment point of view, firstly from the end user point of view, and later on the manager point of view. I think that brings us to the end of our presentation. I know that Francesca has collected a few questions. If you want to submit us a couple of them.
Sure. Great job, guys. So here's to the first question. I noticed that some exams require me to set multiple correct answers. How does the scoring you described work for such questions?
Yeah, that's So there are, to rephrase some questions, that where you can select multiple options. So there is not one single correct answer, but you can select multiple correct answers. And in this case, we set the answer as correct whether you correctly set all the options that are correct. So if there are 2 out of 4 answers that are correct, you have to find all the 2. If you just miss one, the question is considered as wrong. That's it was a decision that we took looking at the measure and the standard quizzes, how they work in the standard scenarios.
Great. Let's move on to question number 2. It seems you require several data to make your assessment work. How many user answers are needed to compute the difficulty of a question? And what about new questions?
Well, I'll take this one as well. Let's say that when we create a new question, our content authors set in a curated way the properties of these questions. So practically speaking, they set the difficulty of the question. That is the first property, that the main property that we can use to assess your scores. Of course, as many data as we collect, new data, we improve this difficulty that was manually set. And of course, since it's set by a human person, it is very subjective. So for an author, it can be an easy question. For another author, it can be a very difficult question. So to complete my answer, how many user answers are needed? I will say in the hundreds of answers we need to have an accurate way to compute the question's difficulty. Until that, we will trust the difficulty that was set by the author.
Thank you, Roberto. We have another question. What should I do to improve my score?
Okay, so I can take this one. So here I'm showing my profile, and when you select a domain here on the left, you can easily find improve your score at the bottom of the graph. So you can just simply select a quiz, and answering that quiz will improve your score in that particular domain.
Perfect. I think we just have time for one last question. Does my score improve if I watch a course?
Oh, great question. No, just to make this very clear, your score will improve only when you do quizzes, exam, or lab. It doesn't improve doing courses, learning path, or resources, or anything else. Just quizzes, exam, and labs.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much, guys. I'll leave it to Rob for the final remarks.
Yeah, thanks everybody for having attended this webinar. I hope you received useful information about our product, and also some information about how it works under the sign. As a reminder again, you will receive the recording as soon as it is available. And if you are around either Orlando or Vegas in November, just want to let you know that the first week of November will be at the Microsoft Ignite, and while later in I think the first week of December we will be in Vegas for the AWS reInvent. So if you are there, just pass through our booth. Thank you again to everybody. Any question that we weren't able to answer will be answered later via email. Thank you again, and goodbye. Ciao, ciao.
Ciao.